Hey there, friends. Dave Paulides, CanAm Missing Project, a copyrighted edition for our video channel. Thanks for being here. Now, we're going to talk about one missing person case today, and we're going to get into it pretty far. Before I get into that, got off the phone with my distributor today, and the movies are going up. And what happens is that they have to send the movies to the various outlets, Tubi, YouTube, Amazon, Vimeo, etc. And then they have to be screened, make sure there's no viruses on the copy. They have to get uploaded. They have to set them with commercial times. It's a long process. I just got told today it's going pretty good. So they hoped in the next 2 weeks, the 3 movies I own will be back up, which is good news since it's been a year since I've gotten one dime. And then some people made some snide remarks in the last couple of movies about I'm complaining, and I'm not complaining, friends. I get a lot of questions, why aren't my movies up? I'm trying to explain it politely. It's frustrating to me to have these issues come up, and I apologize. But it's about the movies. I got an interesting note from my partner from YouTube about the complaints about people being unsubscribed. So in the last 3 months, I've talked to a lot of content providers. And it seems like there's quite a difference between some and others. I know a lot of people here get unsubscribed weekly. Others say they've never been unsubscribed, but they never get notified about the movies. Well, that's just as good as being unsubscribed. I've got friends that talk about much more mundane topics and are much more middle of the road, and they've been around for a while. They never have any people unsubscribed. And they said, explain that to me again, Dave. And I explained it to them. They said, that's bizarre. It's never happened to us. So they said, let me check with some people. This guy gets back to me and goes, no, none of the people I know have had these problems. And I said, well, I've heard from others that they do have the problem. Well, YouTube said that they are having a problem on some platforms, but it's going to be quite a while before it's fixed. My partner said they didn't know what that meant, but they didn't give it a lot of hope that it's going to be anytime soon. Lovely. But I did hear today from a pretty good source that Elon Musk is fed up with what YouTube is doing. And he's put some of his best engineers for the last 6 months on a project to build something that's competitive with YouTube. Oh, I hope so. I hope so. We've looked at a couple other platforms. We're getting pretty close. And obviously, I'd rather go with Elon than anybody else. And I hope he can come through with it. And I have a lot of faith that if the rumors are true, he'll come through. So that's that. And that's good. My book, Missing 411 Washington State, is blowing off the shelves. Thank you, the many of you that have ordered it. A lot of people have ordered 2 copies and 2 hats. I've got a lot of good reports on the hats. Again, if you want a copy, go to our website, NA, like North America, nabigfootsearch.com. Go to the online store. All right. This case involves a young boy named Terry Cook, 3 years old, went missing April 24th, 1948. I'm pretty good on dates. Names, not so good. Dates, I'm pretty good. And right when I see 1948, I'm paying attention. 1948 is one of those years that has more disappearances than many other years surrounding it. Not even by a little, it's a lot. And again, these are only cases that match our profile. So when I see these dates come up, I start paying attention. Well, Terry lived in a place called Rockwood, Maine. Kind of in the northern part of Maine, near the west. It's way up there. This is the outskirts of Maine, Canada right here. This is Dover, Foxcroft, Greenville, Jackman. And if you can see, there's just tons of water around this whole area. And that's where his family lived. Now, his dad was a lumberman. His name was Leslie Sr. And he had a daughter, well, he had a sister named Maureen, and a brother, Leslie Jr. And the family lived in Rockwood. Didn't have a lot of streets. And if you still look at it today, there's not a lot of streets in Rockwood. It's a pretty small town. It's a beautiful area, though, and it's still very thick around that city with woods. Well, the family described Terry as a delicate child. Not quite sure what that means, but I have a pretty good idea. Well, on April 24th, 1948, at about 3:15, Leslie Sr. took a couple block walk in the city to the store to get some things. Well, he's gone about 15 minutes, and the family said that Terry went outside, and they all thought that he was going to go out and meet his dad coming back. Well, Dad didn't come home for another half an hour. So he left at 3:15, and about 3:45 he walks in the door. The wife asks him, "Hey, you got Terry with you?" He says, "No." He said, "Well, he went out looking for you." She says, "No, I never saw him on the street all the way coming in." So the family goes out and they figure he's just crossed the street with buddies doing something. They look all over. They don't find him. Now, multiple articles stated that Moosehead Lake, which was about 2 blocks from their house, was still frozen over. But the family searched all the streets in the city, didn't see him, talked to people, nobody saw him. Leslie Sr. said there was almost nobody on the street when he was coming in because it was pretty cold. Well, when Terry left, he was wearing overalls, a bright red coat, and some light shoes. Well, late that night, they had about 20 people from the city trying to help him. And early the next day, word got out to the Maine Wardens service and to Somerset County Sheriffs that a little boy was missing, and they had responded. Now, nighttime temps were down into the 20s. And for a 3-year-old boy, that's a deadly. Now, he did have a coat, which was good, but everyone knew it was too cold to survive many of those nights. Well, several neighbors were helping at the beginning. When the deputies arrived, they also brought a canine with them. This is weird because 2 different articles said 2 different things. One article stated that the canine went from the house straight down to the lake, where the lake was frozen over. Okay. Another article said that the dog didn't pick up any scent, and they sent it home the next day. I don't know what to believe. But it would seem odd that the dog would go straight to a lake that's frozen over. And when Mrs. Cook was told that, she said, "Well, that dog's wrong because Terry would never go near the lake. His brothers and sisters went down to the lake and walked on the ice all the time against my will. But Terry was deathly afraid of that lake and wouldn't go anywhere near it." Those are her words. Well, Monday, April 26th, they had a full search team out, and they had about 100 people. Maine Warden Service, deputies, and people from the city all responded. And the wardens were 3/4 of a mile from the house, directly west of the house. Let me explain this. So the family lived in Rockwood. This is Moosehead Lake. It's a big lake. Well, they lived in Rockwood, 3/4 of a mile this way. This is Blue Ridge, and this goes all the way down into the city, kind of a rolling ridge line. And 3/4 of a mile away, searchers said that they found some footprints in the mud and ice that were fresh, the exact same size as Terry's. Interesting, because no canine went in that direction. But they were the same size, fresh, and there were several that were going up this ridge. Remember, he's only 3 years old. So April 27th, they had 30 wardens and volunteers. They had 2 boats dragging the lake just in case. And the 30 wardens and volunteers came up to about 100 people. And they had about 70 of them up in that ridge looking. And they had gridded it, so they were doing the right thing. On April 28th, the Warden Service added 2 more boats to the lake with grappling hooks, and they were going back and forth. But they had strong winds that day, and it kind of hindered the boats, they said. They had 100 searchers highly organized. They said that the shore near the lake froze every night because it was so cold. And then the state warden service said something interesting. I find it interesting. In one of the press statements, they said that they were highly confident that the tracks they saw going up the ridge were those of Terry's. Well, if I was a parent, I'm not sure what I'd think of that. Because if those were Terry's, he's not going to last long, maybe one night. So as far as a little boy could go on one day, I think that would be it. And I personally think that he's not going to live through 20-degree temperatures if he's in bare feet. And they said footprints, not tracks. April 29th, Thursday. He disappeared on a Saturday afternoon. Mrs. Cook made a statement to the press that she hoped that someone had picked up her son in the city, because she knew that the cold would be a deadly aspect for her son. Well, on that Thursday, they kept up the heavy presence on the ridge, and they kept 4 boats out grappling the lake. Mrs. Cook reiterated again that the boy would not go near the lake. She goes, I understand why you're grappling the water, but my son wouldn't be there. She was adamant. And I think the wardens kept reinforcing that they were sure that they were on that right track going through the ridge. Now, I want everyone to think about this. Now, if it was me and I saw some small footprints heading up a ridge, I don't care what the dogs think. I'm following those tracks. But why wouldn't the dogs track that little boy up that ridge? So, Terry was last seen, again, in a bright red coat. And you know, it seems like a lot of these searches involve kids that disappear or people who disappear in bright clothing. Now, nobody in that community reported seeing him on the street. And it is a small community, but I think it's odd that nobody saw him. So April 30th, it was a Friday. And the wardens and the sheriffs requested 200 people to plan to show up Sunday, that was in 2 days, for a big search. And they actually stated what they needed. They needed you to be out all day, 8 to 10 hours. They needed you to be wearing good boots. And you needed to be wearing clothing that you'd be going over rocks and hillsides and getting dirty. And if you couldn't do that, then they didn't need you. Now this is a picture of the Cook family that was in the newspaper. Mrs. Cook, Leslie Sr., Leslie Jr., and Maureen. Now, Terry was 3. His brother was 4 and a few months. Remember that picture. Remember that picture. So, on that Friday, the wardens and the sheriffs had 200 people on site, and they had many people from the lumber mill that were friends of Leslie Sr. And a lot of those people took the whole week off looking for that little boy. Now, Saturday, May 1st, weirdly, weather starts to change and heavy showers start coming down at about noon. The sheriff said that it drove searchers off the mountain because the rain was so heavy. And then when the rain started to let up, they said it was super windy and they couldn't grapple the lake at all. So May 2nd, the big day, 200 people show up. And what does it do? Heavy rains again. The sheriff and the chief warden for the area said that the people went out and did their best they could. But the rains had washed away any evidence if Leslie was still alive. Meaning if he was still walking, rains that heavy, washing tracks away. Sunday, May 3rd, 100 searchers they get again. Now this is for 1948, 8 days into it now. You're still getting those numbers in a rural area of Maine. That's really good. But the warden said that this is going to be one of the last days of the formal searches that they would participate in. And there were 100 searchers, but 6 wardens and the supervising warden for the area. Every day they were out for 8 hours. Every day they divided that city and the ridge up, and they covered the city multiple times. They covered the shoreline multiple times, and then they covered that ridge. And they tried to cover a 4 square mile area of the ridge. And I read that and I thought, well, that's pretty amazing. Why? Because search and rescue manuals today still say a 3-year-old should be found in about a 2 square mile area from the point they were last seen. Wow. So they were getting it right. The wardens were doing the right thing. Now, if you've never watched the Maine Warden show on TV, watch it. I find that the Maine Wardens are some of the best at search and rescue. The way they handle themselves, their protocol, the way they jump on a search, I admire that a lot. And it's a good show too. They do a lot of law enforcement and stuff. So Tuesday, May 4th, the warden service cuts it in half to 3 wardens now on site. And they had handpicked 6 of the best woodsmen from the prior week. And what they were going to do is something that was brilliant. Something Dave would have done about day 2 or 3 is they pushed back, way back further on that ridge, looking for Terry. So here's Rockwood. They were searching a 2-mile radius, so 2 miles out, 2 miles up, 2 miles out, and 2 miles up. So 2 times 2 would be 4 square miles. A 2-mile radius from the point last seen, 2 miles out. But now what they were doing is they were pushing way out. Now, if you're a longtime follower of the show, you know that many times kids are found miles away. Now, we don't know how they get there. But for the warden service to come up with this, brilliant. Well, they spend the whole day way back in the woods. They don't see anything. They don't find anything. And they come back in. And that was essentially the end of the search. Somerset County sheriffs kept 1 deputy on scene for the following 8 days. And he kept searching those backwoods, following up on anything anyone heard or thought. And that deputy stayed on scene for another week, and then that was it. Now, April 3rd, 1948. The incident we're talking about happened April 24th, 1948. So August 3rd, the lake was warmer, had no ice. It was summertime, probably the warmest month in Maine. And two fishermen are out. They capsize their boat and they disappear. The Maine Warden Service goes out and starts searching for the fishermen and their bodies. And they stated in an article that they were going to keep 2 warden boats on the lake looking for the bodies of the fishermen and looking for Terry Cook's body, because they explained that as a body dies in cold water, it'll go down. Part of the decomposition process is your body develops bubbles inside. Those bubbles start to lift your body slowly through the water till you eventually reach the surface. You'll be at the surface, and it all depends on the water temperature and the air temperature, a certain period of time before you permanently go all the way back to the bottom and stay on the bottom. Wardens knew this, and they were at that warmest time in the lake, and they figured that Terry's body would be up. So they actually spent several days covering the shoreline and driving the lake in a grid pattern, just in case. And guess what? They found nothing. Now, 10 months after Terry disappears, February 10th, 1949, Leslie's older brother, Leslie, is on Schoolhouse Hill sledding down the mountain with a bunch of kids. And his dad's there watching him. Well, Leslie gets going a little fast, goes down the bottom of the hill, and keeps going out onto a roadway. A lumber truck is coming, runs over Leslie, kills him instantly. Remember I told you that picture? This was Leslie. Now you only have Leslie, Maureen, and Mrs. Cook in the family. They lost both their boys in 10 months. If I was there, friends, if I was a dad, I couldn't have done it. I couldn't go on. You'd have to put me in a psych wing. I'd go crazy because I'd have so much guilt. When I read this, I couldn't believe it. I kind of asked myself, are some families cursed? How much can any one parent handle? In a lot of ways, not knowing what happened to your son, to me, is almost worse than what happened to Leslie Jr. You know what happened, you saw it. In a lot of ways, maybe you should have prevented it. He could have thought that way, I don't know. But I read that and I thought, oh my gosh, how that man went on, I have no idea. I guarantee one thing, I wouldn't have stayed in that community. Something's not wrong, not right there. Something is not right there. I would have left. Make it short, Terry Cook was never found. Now I did go back, and like I said, I'm pretty good on dates. 1948. In our records, now this is not all the U.S., because our profile points condense down those missing people to a finite number. But In total, we have 18 people missing on our records in 1948. A huge number of people for 1948. 9 of those are kids under 6. 6 males, 3 females. The majority are between 30 months, 2 years, 3 years old. There's a couple of, I think there's 1 or 2 6-year-olds in the group. Most of them are really young. I always, when I wrote Missing 411 Eastern United States, I identified that 1940s time frame, and especially in Pennsylvania, a time frame when more kids disappeared than at any time I could tell in U.S. history. Those young kids. So what was happening in that time frame? Well, we had a war going on, but in this case, the dad was home. So it wasn't the dad not being home. Even though the dad wasn't home when Terry left. Now, so what was going on? Why are all these kids disappearing? Because as we step into the 50s and 60s, the numbers declined significantly. And in fact, even today, the numbers are nothing like they were then. I wish I had a logical reason. I don't. I just like to give you facts. This is, remember we talked about a trapper who disappeared in this area of Maine. Now this is a map of Maine today, and you can see that this area is not developed hardly at all. It is still really wild up in here. And this middle section of water, I'm telling you what I've said before, if you see a map and you see that, those are one of the first indicators to me that they're going to have a lot of disappearances in that area. And here we go. So that's our case for today. I greatly appreciate you being here. Please make sure you're subscribed. Please share the video. I always like reading the comments. Please don't make a rude comment, otherwise I'll just get rid of it. And I do get rid of a lot of comments, and I don't even tell you about them because I don't want to feed the misery for some people. And you are appreciated. So thank you. And remember, if you go to our site, nabigfootsearch.com, and you go to future appearances at the bottom of that website, I have a list of where I'm going to be in the coming year. In May, I'm going to be in Washington. September, I'm going to be on the Bigfoot cruise. If you're interested in that, go to Alaska Bigfoot Cruise, and you'll find it. And there's a couple other places I'll be in the coming year, and I'm not going to make a lot of appearances, but I forgot to tell you, I'm going to be in Gatlinburg, Tennessee for a huge Bigfoot conference there. I've done that before, and that one's a lot of fun. Gatlinburg Bigfoot Conference, find it there. In the meantime, be kind. Be kind. Do friendly things. Keep a smile on your face. It doesn't cost you anything to be kind. Thank you. Paulides out.